Welcome to my Studio Chronicles, and now for something completely different. I am doing some really weird, crazy things and having fun. So, my first question is, do you ever wonder how to begin a painting uh, out of thin air? I mean, to say, if you don't have a reference, if you're not going to paint a flower or flowers or a landscape or a still life, if you want something truly non objective, how do you begin? If you haven't done that yet, it's a real puzzle. And I remember back when I hadn't ever done it before. So the trick is to come up with some prompts or some ideas, a whole sequence of ideas that you might begin with. And then when you begin, then you respond to the way that you began and you build a painting from there. But take a look at what I have come up with just for fun. I do use prompts. I use a whole bunch of prompts or ideas, but look what I've done with them. Yep, it is what it looks like. I've come up with a roulette wheel full of prompts, how to start a non-objective painting, just to start it. And so this is giving me all kinds of fun ideas, and I'm going to put this to work and show you how much fun this is. Watch. So I'm going to do my wheel, spin my wheel, and it comes up with a big brush and a large area. So I'm grabbing a big brush. I'm going to work in a limited palette of 3 colors plus black and white. So this is Indanthrone blue, Hansa yellow, and a magenta. I decided to keep things limited. I'm going to use this big brush. I'm working on Arches 140-pound watercolor paper, and I'm shoving my wet acrylic paint into this paper, working in some large areas, using plenty of water. So the idea is to put some large marks down right from scratch. That's what my prompt said, so that's what I'm giving a try. Apply white thick paint. That's what we'll do next. So I'm using a spatula, a paint applicator, and I'm using gesso, white gesso, as my white, which is thick. So I'm applying some white thick paint, just like my prompt suggested. You can't see it very well, the white on white, but it certainly does offer a completely different texture for the rest of my painting, different from the paper, the white of the paper texture. And I'm dragging some color around. There's no rule here, these are just prompts, they're ideas. And next up, the roulette wheel says, large non-dominant hand scribble. So I'm using a Caran d'Ache. It's a water-soluble crayon, and I'm dragging it through wet paint. The paper keeps the paint wetter than if I were applying it to canvas, so a few scribbles here and there. Next up, let's see. Turn 90 degrees. That's always a good idea. Turning it always gives you a new perspective, a different way of looking at the painting. Okay. Let's see what the wheel says now. Pastel or crayon? Okay, this is a good opportunity to get something bright and colorful. So I grabbed a pastel. This is a soft pastel. And since I'm working on paper, the paper has a nice texture to lay the pastel into. So I'll put some contrasting color from what I've been working with so far. This is an orange pastel. Just drawing some random marks, doing a little bit of coloring, a little bit of outlining. I like to distribute a color in a variety of places. Okay, so next is turning it 90. That's a good idea. Okay, so here we go. Every time I turn it, I see it completely differently, which is the whole point of turning it. It's got to work in each direction. Okay, here we go again. Chicken peck marks. Well, that was kind of a weird idea, but we'll try it. Okay, I'm using an acrylic marker and I'm scratching around, making random marks, sort of inexplicable marks around the paper with this acrylic marker. Why, you might ask? Well, that's a good question. It just seems like an interesting thing to do. Now keep in mind, this painting start is just the bottom layer of a painting. I can use as much or as little of this first draft as I want to. And another spin. I got collage arcs, partial circles with ephemera. So I know what that means. What I mean is I'm going to take some, in this case, some newspaper. Could be any kind of paper, anything I want to collage with. But I want to tear out some circular shapes or partial circles, arcs, arches, and when I get a few torn out of this newspaper, I'm going to place them, glue them down onto my painting. Just for a different type of mark, a different type of texture. So I'm turning it another 90, taking a look at how I might want to place these pieces of newspaper that I tore out. I'm auditioning them, if you will. There's no right or wrong with these placements. This is matte medium I'm using for glue. Occasionally here, as I do this, there'll be some pigment that isn't quite dry on the painting, and so the pigment sometimes colors the matte medium, and that's okay. I'm using a limited palette, so you know, all of these colors go together, and a mixture of these colors go together, so if I brush a little pigment into my matte medium, it won't matter. I'm putting another couple of papers down here, a couple of arches. And as I place these, I'm noticing that my pastel, the orange pastel that I used earlier, is kind of reconstituting when I brush the matte medium onto this newspaper, and the matte medium sort of flows over into that pastel, which is fine with me. In fact, I'm using my stiff brush here just to soften the edges of some of that pastel and make it more of a missable more fluid material. It's almost like painting paint rather than pastel. I like the softness of it. Sorry, my hand is in the way, but you'll see it in a minute. There we go. Well, that was so much fun. I decided to do another one. I had lots of paint, and I do want to have a series of these. Now, keep in mind, these are starts. These are just the bottom layer of a non-objective painting, but it's really fun to work this way, and you get a lot of energy in the piece when you play, when you just play. And these are ideas of how to play. So here we go again. Okay, let's give it a spin. It says turn 90. Well, that's not helpful because I'm starting with a white piece of paper. Newsprint into wet paint. Remove when partially dry. Okay. So here I have to admit I started painting but forgot to hit record. So I had paint on my brush, and now I'm putting out more white paint here, but I have already painted onto this new paper, and I have put one layer of newsprint down. Sometimes it's really hard to get the paint out of these applicators, but sometimes I have to use something to clean out the tip. But I'm adding more fairly thick white gesso, and now I'm using some gesso as glue, and I'm putting some pieces of newspaper down onto this page, onto the wet paint, and I'm going to let it dry. There's method to my madness. I'm going to continue to apply some pieces of newspaper. Newspaper adds interesting texture. I try to leave it so that you can't really read a storyline. In this case, I'm working with French village paper, newspaper, and I'm turning it upside down, so when I remove it, it will probably not be discernible what it says on the paper, because it'll be upside down and backwards and in French, and we'll see. We'll see. So I got my rigger out, and I decided to draw some lines between these pieces of paper while the gesso dried underneath the paper. And I didn't use a prompt here, but this is kind of a fun opportunity to draw some lines between these pieces of paper before I pull them up. So I'm starting to let the painting talk to me a little bit and let go of the prompts, but we'll use them more. I'm just peeking to see if some of the paper will pull up and leave some of it behind. It's sort of working, but really it would work better if I would just leave it alone and let it dry more. So that didn't quite give me what I was looking for. You can't really do it wrong, but I did want more pieces of examples of the paper to be left behind. Okay, let's see what we get next. Add 3 areas of complementary mix. So I'm mixing all 3 of my complements together and mixing a gray. And here I have to admit I forgot to hit record again. So I have mixed my complements together, several of them on the same big brush, and I have gone into my black and white so that I could get a little bit more of a neutral. So I'm having a go around the paper with some of those grays. And here we go again. Finger paint. I love finger painting. So here I go. I'm going in with my Indian Throne blue. The nice thing about using your fingers with paint, especially acrylics, is that you can soften edges with the paint. You can kind of rub it in like a cream into skin, or you can leave dots with your fingers. I'm just having a smear. I'm softening some edges and having fun. I like to get my fingers in it. Really, when you work this way, you kind of respond to what's already there. I'm putting some dots down now with my fingers, and that type of texture leads the eye around. This painting, this start of a painting, has a lot of soft edges, and putting a new kind of texture is a nice contrast. And I'm really partial to magenta. I haven't done a lot of magenta in the previous painting, so it's fun to get into the magenta. And I can always paint right over any of these things in my next round. This is just the first layer of this painting. I'm pulling up now a little bit more of the newspaper, leaving a little bit of it behind. There we go. Pulling up a little more. This does leave some hard edges, more than I had hoped, and also I'm not leaving behind very much newsprint, unfortunately. So we'll do something else in this passage. And next we have apply white thick paint. Okay, we can do that. I will squirt out some more gesso. It takes quite a lot. When you work with the acrylics, you need quite a lot of white, or I do anyway, because these paints are very saturated. Now I had quite a lot of paint on this wide brush, and so really I'm adding white to the paint that was already on the brush, and I'm dipping it once in a while into the water. But I'm just kind of working around, adding more lights to the painting. And here I have grabbed one of my favorite sticks. I actually found this stick in the garden where Van Gogh painted at the asylum during his last days before his suicide. And I brought this apple tree stick home, and I sharpened it, and I tied a ribbon around it so I would remember it. And I do like to scratch into the wet paint with that stick. It made a nice souvenir. Here I'm lifting, I had sort of a puddle of water, and I'm lifting a bit of a puddle off the paper. And I'm now cleaning my brush. I laid my brush in the paint. I'm hard on my tools. Now I'm going to try to lift a little bit more of the newspaper off. It's been sitting and drying a little bit more. So I'm lifting a little bit of it and leaving a little bit of it just to have some visual interest, some texture. And I had several layers of newsprint up there, so I'm not really happy with the hard edges, and I'll be fixing that in a minute. But I have some partial words, and I find that interesting. So, yeah, I could lift that off, or I could glue it down. You have to kind of make those decisions as you go. And here I had more paint left on my brush, so I'm softening some of those hard white edges. Likewise here. And I'm turning it 90 degrees to look at it differently from a different standpoint. It's always good to do that. This painting is pretty well along. So here are the two that we worked on today. They're 20-inch square paintings on Arches paper. These are starts, and we used our roulette wheel prompts. Oh, that was fun. Next week we will develop these further and see where we can take them. I do want to mention that I will be using these prompts in teaching a non-objective painting class. We're going to have fun using my roulette wheel. I'll be teaching that class. It'll be virtual, 4 Thursdays in September 2026, coming up here as I record this. I am very happy to have you join me. I will put information about signing up for my classes in the notes. I don't have the link quite yet to sign up for this particular class, but if you get on my contact list, I will be sending you information as soon as it's available where you can register for this class. I will be teaching a 4-week class in September and another one in October, and I hope you'll think about joining me. So thank you for staying with me today, and I hope you will hit subscribe and join me again. Take care.